Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the original adventures of Hank the Cowdog. Now, before I start reading the next chapter, I want to try something. I'm going to see if I can make this book disappear. Are you ready? Here we go. One, two, three. Holy cow, it worked! Where'd it go? Let's see if I can get it to come back. Whoa! I can't believe it! That's amazing. Well, I'll tell you how I did it later. Anyway, in our last chapter of Hank the Cowdog, he had just finished throwing his guts up after eating all that aged mutton when he found out that they were planning a big raid. And what were they planning to raid? His ranch. So, what is Hank going to do? Is he going to go help them with this raid and battle his old buddy Drover? Well, we're going to find out because chapter 11 is called The Attack on the Ranch. Along about dark, the coyote village came to life. Everybody was excited. Fresh chicken, fresh cat, they shouted. Oh boy! Even the kids were excited. They chased each other around, practiced howling, and played a game called Get the Dog. Now, the idea of the game was that two kids played coyotes and one played the guard dog. The coyotes lured the dog out into a fight and then jumped him. I had played that game myself, only when I'd played it, it hadn't been a game, and I'd been on the dog side. I never thought it was much fun either. Well, after the sun went down, Scraunch climbed up on a pile of rocks and gave a speech to the whole village. He was a firebrand and a rubble rouser, and he preached the kind of hot gospel them coyotes wanted to hear. Jackrabbit run too fast, make coyote tired to catch. Mouse run down hole, coyote have to dig, make tired too. But chicken, easy. Chicken nice and fat. Sit on nest, not fight. Chicken plump and juicy. This night, everybody eat chicken. A cheer went up from the crowd. I was standing beside Missy, and she whooped and hollered along with the rest of them. Scraunch waited for the cheering to die down and glanced over at me. Ranch not have big guard dog now, only little white dog with cut off tail. Maybe this night we kill dog too. Another cheer went up. Scraunch watched me with a half smile on his face. When I didn't cheer with the rest of them, he said, What you say, Hunk? Maybe you help kill little white dog, huh? Maybe so, Scraunch. Maybe so. Then he led the crowd in singing, Me just a worthless coyote, which was everybody's favorite song. It's sort of a coyote national anthem. I noticed it brought tears to old Chief Gut's eyes. Guess it brought back memories of his younger days. When the song started, Rip and Snort came over to where I was and wanted to harmonize, just the way we did the night we were carousing. I tried, but didn't feel much like singing. But Rip and Snort bellered and howled and had themselves a good time. They were all excited about the raid, and they got into an argument over which one was going to give Drover the worst whipping. Listening to 'em snarl at each other, I got a funny feeling about good old boys. They have a way of changing into mean old boys, and pretty quick. The singing stopped, and it was time to start the raid. Scraunch led the whole village in a howl. Then those of us who were going on the raid lined up in a single file. Missy came over to tell me goodbye. Hunk have good fight. Bring back fat chicken. Prove to everybody that he good coyote. Well, thanks, Missy. I'll do my best. Then we marry. Have 7, 8 little pup. 7 or 8? She gave a yip and a howl. Maybe 9, 10. Oh, boy. She nuzzled me under the chin, stepped back, and gave me a smile. Gee, she had a pretty face, but you know what? When she smiled, I saw her mother's face and remembered that aged mutton. Whew, it darn near ruined the occasion for me. Scraunch came down the line, checking things out and giving orders to the men. When he came to me, he gave me a hard look. Better not make mistake. Scraunch watch close. Well, you do that, Scraunch. You might learn something. He gave me a sneer and went back to the front. With the rest of the village cheering, we marched down the canyon rim in a trot. Once we left the village, Scraunch passed the order for silence. Down in the valley, we got on a cow trail and followed it south toward the creek. I couldn't help wondering where Drover was and what he was doing right now. Had he heard the singing? Did he run to the machine shed, or was he out on patrol? I hoped for his sake that he was in the backest corner of the shed, because these coyotes were in a dangerous mood. Sounds like trouble's a brewing. As we slipped along through the night, I started putting a few things together. It was pretty clear by this time that Scraunch was the one who had been responsible for the chicken murders. He had been slipping down there by himself, killing one or two a night. And now he decided to launch a full-scale invasion and share the spoils of war with the rest of the coyotes. Funny, I'd solved the case, only now I was working for the other side. Life sure does play tricks on a guy. Makes it awful hard to plan for the future. Growing up, I never would have dreamed that I'd end up a chicken killer. I was kind of glad Ma wasn't around to see it. About 200 yards north of the ranch, Scraunch called a halt and gave the final orders for the attack. He told Rip and Snort to circle around and come in from the south, and sent another couple of guys over to the west. He hadn't given me any orders, and that was good. I figured I could lay low, stay out of the way, and, show up when all the dust had cleared. You, I looked around. Huh? You go with Scraunch. We get Little White Dog. Find out how bad you want Sister. Well, surely I don't deserve such an honor. Not talk, only fight. The others left, and me and Scraunch started sneaking toward the ranch. Oh, I felt sick. Things had gotten out of control. I hadn't wanted it to happen this way. Me against my old buddy Drover? Well, in his own bungling way, Drover was a nice dog. We'd had our squabbles and differences, but we'd had some good times, too. About 25 yards out, Scraunch stopped and dropped down into the grass. I squinted into the darkness and saw Drover standing beside the northeast corner of the machine shed. Just as you might expect, he wasn't looking in our direction. The little runt had no idea what was fixing to break loose. A laugh growled in Scraunch's throat. This easy. Dog stupid. Well, I couldn't argue with that. Facts is facts. We crawled forward another 10, 15 yards. Then, off to the south, Rip and Snort raised a howl. Drover jumped up in the air and faced the south. I could see that he was shivering. Then the boys off to the west raised a howl, and Drover faced that direction. Scraunch growled, and Drover faced us. His head was cocked sideways, and one ear stood up. That meant he still didn't see us. But he was beginning to get the picture. The ranch was surrounded. I kept waiting for him to run, but he didn't. Scraunch pushed himself up out of the grass. You go first. I watch. Who, me? Well, seems to me that... The hair went up on the back of his neck, and there was murder in those yellow eyes. You go first, or I cut throat right here. Well, I could tell he wasn't kidding. I just thought, there's no need to... Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I'll go first. I stood up. Scraunch threw back his head and let loose the bloodiest howl I ever heard. Sent shivers all the way down to the end of my tail, is how frightful it was. He gave me a shove, and the attack was on. Drover heard us coming. He started yipping and jumping up and down, but he stood his ground. I could hear myself talking. Run, Drover, while there's still time. My voice got louder. You got no chance, Drover. Don't try to be a hero. Next thing I know, I was yelling, Drover, run for the shed! You're outnumbered. They'll kill you. Run for your life. The little mutt was so scared he was spinning in circles and jumping up and down at the same time. But he still didn't leave his post. By this time, I could see Rip and Snort sneaking up behind him, the moonlight glinting off their teeth and eyes. They didn't look like good old boys anymore. They had murder on their minds. Behind me, Scraunch was screaming, Kill! Kill! All at once, something snapped inside my head. I felt wild and crazy. I headed straight for Drover. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He was more than scared. He was bewildered. didn't know what was happening to him. He turned to face my charge. As I flew past him and took aim for Snort, I yelled, "This is it, son! Hell against Texas! Fight for your life!" I caught Snort by surprise and sent him rolling down the hill. That gave me just enough time to catch Rip as he was making a dive for the back of Drover's neck, hit him in midair, and knocked him on his back. By this time, Scraunch had plowed Drover under and was standing on top of him, ready to tear out his throat. I lit right in the middle of his back, got a bite on his right ear, and started chewing. That took his mind off Drover. He jumped straight up and pitched me off. I got to my feet, and he got to his feet, and we faced each other. "Call off your boys, Scraunch. Let's make it you and me, 1-on-1. He grinned. "Chicken dog, die for this." I had a little piece of his ear in my mouth, and I spit it out at his feet. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a light come on in the house. That was my only hope. If High Loper didn't hurry and get his pants on and grab his gun, I was a dead dog. "Seems you lost a piece of one ear, Scraunch. If you come a little closer, I'll work on that other one, so's they'll match." Scraunch cut his eyes toward Rip and Snort. "Get him!" Rip and Snort gave me kind of a mournful look. It was decision time. They had to choose between an old drinking buddy and their own flesh and blood. "Get him!" They licked their lips and swallowed and glanced at each other, and they chose flesh and blood. They started creeping toward me. "Drover," I said in a low voice, "keep 'em off my back, son, or we're finished." Drover squeaked. He was too scared to talk. Rip and Snort and the other two coyotes started closing in on me. "Hunk, stupid dog," said Scraunch. "Stupid dog pay with life." "You could be right, Scraunch, but you got to do it." We was totally surrounded, and it was every man for himself. I figured I might as well leave this old life with another piece of Scraunch's ear, so I made a dive at him. We collided and went up on our hind legs. I boxed him across the nose, and he boxed me right back. Made my eyes water. I clawed his hip, and he clawed mine. I went for his ear, and he went for mine. We chewed and snapped and snarled and growled. I think old Scraunch was a little surprised that a cowdog could give him such a tussle. I was holding my own until they jumped me from behind. 2 or 3 of them. Didn't get a good count, but it was plenty enough to finish me off. They wrestled me down, throwed me on my back, and pinned me to the ground. Scraunch walked up and straddled me, showing his big, sharp teeth. "Now you die." He went for my throat, and I heard St. Peter blow his horn. That's the end of chapter 11. Wow. Well, it looks like when push came to shove, old Hank decided that he was going to protect the ranch and he was going to protect his good friend Drover. So he turned on those coyotes, but he might be paying with his life. Scraunch and the coyotes have him on his back and they're ready to rip his throat out. So the next chapter, chapter 12, is the last chapter of the book, and it's called The Exciting Conclusion. We'll do that next time. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you then.